Well, good evening, Council, and good evening, Sioux Falls. It is Tuesday, April 11th, and we will start this City Council meeting by introducing you to your councilors.
Council members Erickson.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzert.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Selberg.
Here.
Starr.
Present.
Staley.
Here.
Councilors, thank you so much for being here. I know you've been working your tails off today, so thank you. In Sioux Falls, we do start our meetings with a invocation. And Jeff Backer is here. He is the Director of Evangelism and Mission and Outreach for First Lutheran Church here in Sioux Falls. So welcome, Jeff. Good to have you here. Thank you. What we'd ask you to do is to stand for Jeff's invocation and then remain standing, please, for our Pledge of Allegiance. Director Jeff, thank you.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for the blessings that you do provide us in your goodness. As you have promised, we receive our daily bread out of your goodness for those that confess you as God and even those that don't. You have established government for the protection and provision of all peoples. We thank you for those that have been called into service and leadership for the sake of the people of Sioux Falls and those that visit this great city. We would ask that you would give all that are charged with leadership wisdom, patience, and your guidance. There are certainly challenges that exist in our community, and we would ask for your continued guidance and steadfast provision. Diversity is a part of your amazing creation, and help us to navigate cultures, processes, and systems that would cause hardship for others. We would pray especially for those that have come before this council tonight to lay their concerns and their joys in this public forum. As this council takes up their work, help us to know that all of this comes in your good will. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know, that's what I was just going to see what I could do to make that happen. See if mine will work.
Thank you very much. Council will now move to our consent agenda. Councilor Erickson?
Mr. Mayor, if I could pull 4 items: affordable housing, homeless shelter agreement, economic development annual agreement for services, downtown Sioux Falls USD Discovery District, and Sioux Falls Development Foundation.
Thank you, Councilor. We'll do that. Any others, Council?
Move to approve the rest of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second, Erickson.
Been a motion to approve our consent agenda tonight, seconded by Councilor Erickson. Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Neitzert.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
That has passed 8-0. Our regular agenda, Council, any changes to that?
Move to approve.
Second, Erpenbach.
Council Vice Chair Kiley would like to approve our regular agenda tonight, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Neitzert.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 8-0. Council, again, folks, welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Thanks for being here tonight. This is the public input portion of our meeting. It is your opportunity to engage the council on really any topic that is of importance to you. If it is an item later on in the agenda, and there's very few items tonight, we'd ask you to wait for that. But really, anything else, just come forward. State your name, please. Keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And please, if you're going to address the council, please address the council as a whole. Thank you. Welcome.
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. I've been watching this. I don't really have an opinion about the annexation thing, and it's a good thing we're getting a task force to try to figure some of this stuff out. But I felt that the timing of the meetings was not good. 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon does not work for any working person in this town. Secondly, having the meeting at a place that couldn't hold the people and had metered parking was ridiculous too. The city owns a lot of buildings in town that could have had it any place else to hold this, to get people there without metered parking. I think this was done on purpose so that people wouldn't show up. I also want to respond to, I spoke last week about the event center, still waiting to get my sales numbers from the city, wondering when they're going to show us what those are. The chamber decided to respond to me as a citizen for my public input about the things, and they said there's empirical evidence that the event center is doing well. Well, you know, maybe we should build the Empire State Building because I think it's done a good job for the city of New York. Here's the deal. We need sales numbers. We need to know what, it's been open 3 years. It's time to tell the public what the place is doing, the economic impact. I remember when the pavilion opened, probably they don't do it anymore, but for the first probably 7 to 10 years, there was always, the Convention and Visitors Bureau has always put out a report about the economic impact of the pavilion. And it was always printed in the paper, and it was always a big thing about how much they were bringing in and what they were doing. And I'm wondering when the event center is going to start doing that. Lastly, there was big news up in Watertown this week. Watertown built a $23 million rec center. And it's pretty nice. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it and stuff. But there's 22,000 people who live in Watertown. They have already 5,000 memberships to the rec center. Now, their fees are about double of what our Midco Aquatic Center is, but of course, our Midco Aquatic Center is only a swimming pool. At this place, you can get, for the basic, you can get weight machines, walking track, swimming pool, gymnasium, locker room, towel service, racquetball, basketball. They're going to have tournaments there. And they built the facility at a big place where there's room for expansion. You can expand the building, the parking lot. There's going to be a middle school built right next to the swimming thing. So my question is, why did it cost us $23 million to build just a pool in the center of town where it can't be expanded? But Watertown somehow figured out how to build a $23 million rec center that has all these amenities and room for expansion. I really believe we should have built the pool either in conjunction with one of the high schools or at Sanford Sports Complex. It would have made more sense. But as I told people, this is what happens when the public doesn't get involved with the decision that's made. There was no vote on the indoor pool. And that was unfortunate. And if there would have been a vote like the event center, we probably would have had a facility that would have been built in a better part of town. Thank you.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Sierra Broussard, Sioux Falls. We had a murder here on Spring Apartments. It's still in investigation, but I think it's going to wrap up in a couple days. I went to this apartment complex. A stabbing, a domestic had happened in there. A day or two, the body had sat there before the police had arrived to pick up this body that this husband had murdered in a domestic situation, and nobody heard or seen anything. Sioux Falls Housing owns it. Called Diane and they said, are we screening these tenants? What is going on in here? She says, we screen our tenants. I got the call volume for this apartment complex. Code enforcement is going to give me the code violations. There is 15 officers at this crime scene. But we have project mentality people in here. And when I'm going to go on them, I'm going to go like a pit bull on them because I'm not finished with this apartment complex. We have thugs in here. We got drug dealers in these apartment complex. We have Indian reservation mentality. When we're going to build this affordable housing and we're going to keep putting these project mentality people, this is what we're going to get. Homicides that, okay, we're going to stab the victim or shoot them. We're going to close our doors and we're not going to see nothing about it. And this is what happened in this case. Craig Lloyd's property, if you remember correctly, low income, the same thing with the transgender. They got stabbed multiple times. Nobody heard or seen nothing, and they went on the video to get the suspect. Thank God for videos. But in this case, there was so much evidence that we didn't need videos in it. Sioux Falls Housing says, well, we got cameras on the property. That's not being proactive here. In a couple days, when this case is closed, I think Kyle Johnson can come back and look at this stuff here, but there are 19 calls for service. Project mentality here, vandalism, burglary, man down, vicious dog, and disorderly conduct, assault. But no assaults for this victim that died. These calls for assaults was not pertaining to this victim here. So when we want to build affordable housing here, it's going to look like the projects. So Craig White's property is the projects. And this property here on Spring is the projects. I know, I've been there and talked to the thugs. It's a disgrace that this woman got murdered. The walls are so paper thin that when you push the handle to the toilet, you can hear the water running. That kind of a brutal attack, and nobody knew nothing about it here. Council, I know y'all about affordable housing, but we're getting people from Chicago, from the Dirty Green projects here, that have this mentality that just happened in this murder. We got people from California that are here just to suck up the government assistance here. And when murders like this happening, they're closing their doors. I'm not talking about all of the issues that are happening here. I'm talking about this low-income housing, these two houses here. Now, we had a shooting that happened this weekend that he shot at the car. Well, that wasn't a drug-related or anything because he had road rage. So that's why he shot at these people. The reason why the people chased the car is because they thought that they knew the subject here, but they didn't. So crime is getting here. And it really, and I'm going to push for 2018 election here that we get an external chief of police here. Because the external chief of police can relate to this mentality of the projects and these homicides more than a person that has just lived here their whole lives in South Dakota and doesn't have a mind frame of a bigger city here. So I urge that the new mayor, come 2018, that we get an external chief of police here. I don't know when the case is going to be closed in a couple of days, but I'm sure y'all have access to the rules and regulations of it. Outreach to the police department and see how this murder went down. And you tell me if it's not project mentality here. Thank you so much.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome, sir.
Mike Gunn, Sioux Falls. According to this annexation, I just wanted to bring up a point, and I did that at the committee today. We have many parts of Sioux Falls that still need work. I don't know if that was part of annexations years ago. As they say, they make an agreement annexation or, excuse me. But we have places over off of Marion Road, 37th in there, where we still have a flood issue. 2 inches of rain, they flood because they don't have storm sewers. When they contact the city, they are told they're on a 20-year plan to take care of that. They've been annexed how long ago? Probably 30 years. It's been buzzkirt. So I think that we should see all that we've already annexed. We should see where we're at from what the agreements were and where we're at with what the city is supposed to take care of. Because if we're not keeping up with those agreements, how can we make new? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Very good. Thank you so much. We'll now move to item 12.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Councilor Erickson had a number of items she wanted pulled from the consent agenda involving economic development and affordable housing. Councilor Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. My apologies.
I don't have any questions. I just want to make a clarifying statement in regards to earlier as we had the agreements brought forward to us. As I went through them, I saw some different language that in my time on the council is new to this. And as I asked questions, this in fact is a tool and a strategy that has been used in the past where we saw a cut if sales tax is also having some struggles, and so if one bleeds, we all bleed. And so that makes sense to have that in there. I know that this council made several of these agreements a priority, and I know those agreements will be honored to the best of the ability as long as the sales tax stays there. So communication is key with this, and so my intent would be to making sure that the council is communicated with if any of these do need to have any cuts or anything like that. The other item that I brought up was the downtown Sioux Falls 40% reserve standard, and that was new language, and so I just want to make a brief statement about that as well as I understood it better as it's funded by the bid as well as the city dollars. And so the intent is who should pay first. So should it be the bid takes on the majority and then the rest is the administration? And so I know I was pretty critical earlier and had strong statements, so I just want to clarify where I was coming from with some of that and offer those few statements to making sure that my position is understood. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve all 4 contracts.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Erickson, thank you. Councilor Mbach, thank you as well. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you, councilors. Now we'll move to item number 12, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing the issuance, execution, and delivery of wastewater system revenue bonds and related loan documents, and pledging a portion of the wastewater system revenue of the city to the payment of said wastewater system revenue bonds.
Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just to recap, last Tuesday at the informational meeting, we spent some time on this next loan, and we went through this PowerPoint presentation that we'll cover again tonight. We did go through a fact sheet that spoke really to every stage of wastewater treatment, but then had some specific information on the digester complex and the need for the renovation and the complexity of that. We also brought, if you recall, the operations manager, Mark Herholzer, up, and he took you through each of the stages of wastewater treatment. Some of that was visual. Hopefully that was helpful to see the different stages of wastewater treatment as it comes in the front door and goes out the back door of the plant to meet our required permit levels. Tonight, this is the first reading of the bond ordinance for this next key investment that we'll make at the plant. Project cost is at $11 million. For the specific project cost, the ultimate loan is just a mark above that. That allows us to have reduced interest rate, but then apply that reduced interest rate up into the watershed. Tonight with me is Tracy Turback, he's the finance director, as you know, Diane Best, the assistant city attorney, our bond counsel attorney, Sherry Rodert, and Trent Lubers with Public Works. Let's go through the presentation. All right, just to frame everyone up, many times we get asked, where is the wastewater treatment plant? We think that's a compliment, but it's located on this map. It was appropriately sited many decades ago and operates at a very efficient level. All right, the project is the digester complex, and it's been lifted out of the site plan that's shown on the slide. That has essentially 4 key tanks that treat the solids. Every stage of wastewater treatment has some level of solids that either come off the top or get settled. They go into this digester complex, very similar to your own stomach as it processes food, takes all the different stages of these solids, stabilizes them, so then ultimately we can apply them to farm fields as a soil amenity. All right, project purpose and need. First of all, replace the primary digester covers. They are at their end of their useful life. We'll also be able to, with a fixed cover system as opposed to floating, increase the digester volume. We also, inside, there's a digester mixing system that the ones that were installed over time began to fail. These new mixing systems will allow those digesters to operate at a very efficient level, and they will be a part of the project as well. And then one of the 4 is a current secondary, just basically a main tank, and to take advantage of the project and to bid it as an alternate, we would add the mixing system to that tank, and then we could convert that from a secondary digester to a primary digester. Very corrosive environment that these tanks have been in for the last 35 years. Anything that would be exposed to open air inside them would have corrosion protection put on them to extend their life. All right, the project cost is $11 million. The term of this note through the state revolving fund is 10 years, 1.25% interest. Again, we do get the opportunity. It's a fantastic program. In lieu of paying interest, they factor us down, but then from 2.25% down to 1.25%, but then we make a commitment that instead of paying those dollars in interest, that we invest those into the watershed. Tonight is the first reading. Next week would be the second reading. We anticipate a bid letting in 2017, and we've staged the construction out over 2 years because we still have to operate this complex as we rotate through and make the necessary improvements to each individual digester. Non-point source, this is the program that's led by Moody County Conservation District, but great program through East Dakota Water and South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. This is the offset of the interest, so we can generate some dollars to actually invest into water quality into the Big Sioux River watershed. Those interest offset dollars are $559,125 that will be invested into water quality. This is a snapshot of the Big Sioux River Basin that starts just north of Brookings County and goes all the way down to the tip of Union County. After the informational meeting, you asked really two key questions for us to follow up on, which was, how do water rates compare if you're in a single-family house, medium-sized multifamily, or large? And so we sent that out into a memo, and we can certainly add that. We also were asked, what are the funding priorities of the non-point source funds? We also followed up with that. And then last item I just wanted to bring to your attention is that there is a corrected version of this bond ordinance on SIRE. Throughout the course of one final review, there was about 4 typos that we wanted to, that we overlooked at the first time, and so we've made those changes. And so the corrected version with those 4 key typos has been updated and is on SIRE for your review. Our team is here to answer your questions and would love to satisfy those questions.
Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Folks, this is a first reading, so you don't have the opportunity to engage the council just yet. But councilors, any questions, comments? Councilor Staley?
Mark, can you tell us what physically you're going to be doing to invest in the water quality of the Big Sioux River Basin?
Certainly, and a portion of that was sent out, and so we can reiterate some of those priorities. There's we have a lead agency. It's called the Moody County Conservation Agency, East Dakota Water, South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the City of Sioux Falls. Those are the 4 primary partners. And there's a number of different strategies that are being implemented based on the project plan to improve the water quality of the Big Sioux River Basin. And so the funding priorities are livestock management through animal waste management systems. So essentially, if someone's going to upgrade, say, a CAFO, and these dollars can go in and provide some planning funds to make sure that the lagoons that are sized to store the manure is adequate sized, things of that nature. There's one of the key programs has been the buffer strips. The term is called SRAM, Seasonal Riparian Area Management. That's when we'll go out, work with the producer, and secure a 15-year easement. And so that land essentially can be set aside as a filter strip, so as runoff comes off fields or any other use, that can be kind of a first line of defense to filter those sediments before they go into the Big Sioux River. The Big Sioux River's had had a study done, very lengthy study, and it's been impaired by sediment, which is essentially dirt, and then also bacteria. And so the strategies that they line up all are there to try to combat one or both of those impairments. Easements, bank stabilizations, rain gardens, vegetated swales, those are essentially the priorities, but there's a group, there's a lead agency, and then there's a funding, there's a project plan that lines up those different funding priorities.
So how much money are we talking about?
Well, this particular project will add another $559,000 that can be invested into water quality. If we want some more information on the project plan, we can certainly share that with you.
Who manages those funds? Is that those different entities that you mentioned, or is the City of Sioux Falls managing?
Well, we're at the table, but Moody County Conservation District is our lead agency.
And do you work with the Friends of the Big Sioux at all? Do they get any of that money?
Well, Friends of the Big Sioux are very involved as I would say, a stakeholder, because we have a very public process on how those priorities are essentially set. And Dana Lasowski and his team, they're also involved with some of the other soft factors, like on April 22nd, we have the Big Sioux Greenway cleanup. They do a lot for that kind of a program. So hand in hand, they're certainly involved.
But are they getting any funds?
I'm not aware of that. Trent, are you aware? No, they're not.
Did any of that ever go back into like promoting rain gardens within residences in Sioux Falls? Could you do that?
Well, it's listed as a funding priority. I don't know if we've had one of those come up that ultimately said, we want to have a matrix that the investments that are made truly are working toward improving water quality. And so it certainly is a listed. It would have to probably be public water that would flow through it. So it wouldn't necessarily be in probably someone's private backyard that would only be private water. It would have to be, I would say, a public water that would get diverted through and then go through that kind of a rain garden. Yep.
Okay, we'll talk later. Thank you.
Certainly.
Yes, Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Cotter. When you did the informational last week, giving us a week in between the first reading gives us a chance to answer a lot of questions and gives you time to answer it. So I want to say thank you for when you do your planning and you come forward to us, you give us that week or so in between just so we get a chance to, it's hard when we get the information at 4 o'clock and then try to scurry around to find information between meetings and things and sound intelligent. So I appreciate the way your department treats us as a council and brings that forward.
You're welcome.
The one quick question that I have to follow up on Councilor Staley's question, of the $559,000, how do we invest that into the watershed? Is it over time or over the course of the loan, or is this front-end money, or is it as we're paying that down? How quickly do we invest it, I guess, is the...
It's fairly quick. Trent, do you want to speak to that?
Trent Lubers with Public Works. It really depends based on how they sign up projects and how they can sign up easements and conservation easements for the repairing program. So the project improvement plan that they have for the segment of the Big Sioux River was a 5-year plan from 2015 through 2020. And the goals set in that plan were to do 13 animal feeding operations and to do a certain amount of linear feet. And they've already done 11 animal feeding operations. So those are expensive, and they've taken, that's taken some of the cash more quickly than what they would have projected. So it really depends on how successful they are as far as signing up producers and those types of opportunities to clean up the Big Sioux River. The other thing to think about is that these funding dollars only become available as we take out loans. So there's only a certain amount of money there. So this $559,000 and our portion of funding for the project is only there to do that as that money becomes available, and we leverage it through the SRF program.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr, thank you. Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, April 18th for this particular item?
So moved. Second, Urbanbach.
Councilor Vice Chair, thank you. Councilor Erickson, thank you. Or Councilor Urbanbach, thank you as well. Team, if that is it. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Councilor Zennis pass 8-0. Thank you. Item number 13, please.
A resolution approving the 2017 audit plan.
Councilor Rolfing?
Yes, as always, we have a internal audit plan for the year, and our internal audit manager, Kim Schroeder, will make the presentation. All of you have in front of you the audit plan for the year.
Kimberly, welcome.
Hi, Kim Schroeder, Internal Audit. And as Rex said, I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of the 2017 audit plan, which went through audit committee during our March meeting. Our auditing standards do require that I confirm to the board yearly, so I'll do that tonight, because in our case, that is you, the City Council, that the internal audit activity is organizationally independent of the departments and programs that we audit, both in impact and in appearance. And so with that, on to the annual audit plan. We do have 10 audits on this year's plan, 8 of them being new, so I will just briefly discuss each of them. The ambulance service contract is currently in process. We're reviewing the internal control procedures over at the health department to see how they monitor the contract and ensure compliance with those response time requirements and things like mutual aid procedures. We are going to look at maintenance of administrative instructions. With that, we will work with all of the various city departments to review written policies and procedures that are in place. We want to ensure those procedures are up to date, relevant to current city operations, and also that the responsibilities within them are identified and defined to allow proper succession. We're also going to look at fee waivers. As you know, the city collects a variety of fees, anything from parking citations to code violations, use of the parks and community centers, et cetera. The audit's going to focus on the procedures we have in place for fee waivers over those and the controls that would be in place to prevent unwarranted fee waivers. We also we're requested to look at water utility management. So we're going to look at the water utility rates and compare what the City of Sioux Falls does with best practices for administration and rate setting, and ensure that we are able to respond to current and future needs of our city. Kind of the same tone here with septic hauler rates. We were asked to work with Public Works to determine that those rates charged for septic disposal are comparable to those of the region, that they are indeed sufficient to cover the cost of the service we're providing, and that they're fair and equitable to all users of that service. Another audit we currently have in process here is cash handling out at the Sioux Falls Area Humane Society. We're reviewing internal controls in place over cash handling there because the Humane Society employees are accepting cash on behalf of the city for animal control services such as licensing, impounding, and boarding of animals. And looking at preventative maintenance, we will be working with facilities management to review our current maintenance schedules and the procedures that we use to update and monitor those to ensure that we're doing our best really to extend all useful, not all, but to extend the useful lives of city-owned assets. We're going to focus on the bigger things there. Fees for motor vehicles. We receive revenue pass-through from the state, and those revenue sources that come into us monthly are at the discretion of the person that's being passed through. So we're going to do some recalculation of those fees, make sure we're getting our appropriate portion. We do also have 2 carry-forward audits from 2016. Very similar with the cable TV fees. Those are coming in through providers, and we're going to do some calculation on how those fees are charged to the customers and then subsequently remitted to us. And that one's currently in process as well. And then we're going to do a review over internal controls of accounts payable. And then last but not least, some analysis and follow-up. Every year we perform follow-up procedures to determine that the recommendations that we've made in the prior year's audits that were agreed to by management were implemented timely. And then we do present those results to our audit committee. And then according to the city's fraud control policy, which we adopted, I believe, in 2012, it requires a citywide fraud risk assessment every 5 years, so we'll be due to do that. And then we're also going to work with the city's budget analyst to review information from the CAFR and report on financial indicators that would provide information both on the short and long-term financial health of our city. And I think that was last completed in 2013 based on the 2012 financials. So with that, I would answer any questions and ask for your approval of the plan.
Kim, thank you. Appreciate that. And good luck to you. Folks, is there anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to these items? Council?
I would move approval.
Second, Nitzert.
Council Chair has made a motion to approve this resolution, seconded by Councilor Nitzert. Councilor Erickson, please.
Can I just ask a quick question, if I may? I know this is your plan, but talk to me a little bit if all of a sudden you identify a need that needs to come up. Is this the only thing that you're going to focus on, or if there's other directions that you might see a need or desire to have done? Is there leeway for that?
Certainly. As all years, we do budget in additional time for requests either from management or from council for those items that would come up. And also that's why you see from time to time we do have the carryover audits,
right? You
know, if things do need to get pushed back. So it is just a plan or guidance to go by.
Okay, and then if I may ask one more, Mr. Mayor, please. Remind me how you come up with this list. Is this driven by the council? When do you request those? Is it only audit? Is it all council? Is it the administration where Director Cotter could come in and say, hey, I really want you to look at this item for me. Can you do that? I mean, just give me a brief overview.
Every fall we send out a questionnaire or survey to management. I believe it goes to council as well. Rich did that prior to leaving fall of 2016. Typically we present this a lot sooner, but with the turnover it's a little later in the year here. But no, we take feedback from management, feedback from council on what they've identified as risk areas or areas that could be incorporated. And then we also have an audit universe where we look at all the major operating units as a whole for the city, and you know, the last time they were audited, and going to take that a step further going forward and try to do a little bit of a 3 to 5 year plan with some risk built in on likelihood and impact. You know, there are areas of the city where if something goes wrong, it's going to have a higher impact than others. So some of those other areas might you might never see it audited unless it's requested.
Right.
So
okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Kim, thank you. Council, a roll call, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Erfenbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Council, that is passed 8-0. Thank you. Any other business, Council? A motion to adjourn. Thank you, Council Vice Chair. Appreciate it. Second by Councilor Erfenbach. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Sioux Falls. Make it a great, great night.